Security, disability, insurance, and all that fun stuff. And what does that have to do with you? You should care about it. It has a lot to do with you, or it could. And it would be very important for you to know about it if it does. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be talking about Social Security, disability, and how that may or may not interact with your VA disability or future VA disability claims. And today we're going to have a guest, the president and one of the partners from Tabak Law, Lauren Zwirlein, is going to tell us all about it. She knows way more about it than I do, and she's a pro. She knows everything about the Social Security, the legal end of that, so she's going to fill you all in. But for those of you that are unaware, I don't know how you could be, but out of every single paycheck that you get, there's a little line that pulls money out for Social Security, and your employer pays some for that too, and it goes into a big pool. Some people maybe have just paid it, taxes, they suck, whatever, and moved on with their lives. But some people have dug a little deeper and found out that that's actually an insurance policy for you. If you get hurt or disabled and you cannot work, then Social Security pays you so you can live your life in the face of that. It's an insurance policy if you get injured and are unable to work. Also, there's another pot of that. So people get Social Security when they retire. Right, so there's another pot of money there that you collect. You pay into it throughout your career, and then it's something you're able to collect on in your retired age as well. So it's an important part of pretty much everybody's working financial life. Now, if you have a VA rating, if you're a veteran with a service-connected disability, you could potentially still be able to work. I have a service connection. I'm still working. Some people don't, are unable to work, however, depending on the severity of your illness or injury that has been connected to your service. If you are unable to work, there's a chance that your existing disability may or may not interact or play nice with or not play nice with, or not be able to be taken concurrently with any Social Security disability. And that's something that you need to know. So we're going to chat with Lauren today about how those things interact, because if you currently have a service connection, or you are a veteran and you don't, and you haven't for some reason filed a disability claim, file a disability claim. Yeah, don't be a tough guy. Come on. You got to do it. It's something you need to know about how these things can interact, because you don't want to be caught unawares thinking that you are going to be receiving X income or X benefit, and then it's nowhere to be found. Or you don't want to leave money on the table, stuff that'll help you subsist if you're unable to work. So I'm going to stop yapping. I think I'm going to stop yapping. Press the layout button. I'm going to bring in Lauren. Hi, Lauren. How are you?
Hey, Adam. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So Lauren is, like I said, president and partner at Tabak Law, and she manages the Social Security vertical for Tabak Law. Okay. So I guess my first question is what drove you to become passionate about Social Security?
Yeah, it was sort of by accident.
Okay. You didn't like grow up and were like rescued from a burning building by a Social Security lawyer and...
I wish. It'd be a great story. No, I actually didn't even know that this practice area existed. And upon graduating from law school, I got connected with Fred Tabak, who was our founder. And I got a job here, and I pretty much never left. I just really fell in love with the practice, and I'm really grateful I get to do it.
What is it about Social Security that excites you? What gets you moving in the morning to get to work and fight for people?
Yeah, I do think it is the people. It's very client driven, and you can make a real material impact in someone's life. Lawyers are sometimes not everyone's excited to have to talk to a lawyer.
What?
Sometimes people don't like us, but I feel like we are the good guys, fighting the good fight and really helping people get the benefits that they deserve. And I just really enjoy that aspect of the job for sure.
I would say most lawyers that I've met, actually, I like quite a bit. And everybody around Tabak is fantastic too. I haven't met one person at Tabak Law that I don't think is great.
Well, I appreciate that.
They all get a bad rap, but you're right. You are the good guys. So what does how does Social Security disability insurance differ from, let's say I'm a veteran and I have an illness or injury that happened through my term of service? How does that differ from SSDI?
Yeah, so one of the big things that's different is that we're not interested in causation. So you all need to prove that your injury or illness started or was caused by something that occurred during your service or even boot camp, to my understanding. So
Right. Yep.
something related, it has to be something related to the military.
Hmm.
Social Security takes a much broader view and they look at you as a whole. So you may have a congenital condition, you were born with something, and then maybe you had an accident, and maybe you just developed a condition, due to old age or something like that. They look at all of those conditions. It doesn't matter how you developed them, where they came from. They just look at, okay, what conditions do you have and how does it limit your ability to work?
So rather than like, we will compensate you if it can be proven that you had Agent Orange exposure when you were in Vietnam, which I don't know where else you would get Agent Orange exposure, but that was the first thing that came to mind, versus for Social Security, if it like you have this condition, we don't care where it came from, it's still preventing you from being able to work, and so we'll compensate you.
Right, yes. And it's different too because you guys use a rating system.
Right.
Right, you get your percentages, 10, 20, 30, whatever it is. And Social Security is all or nothing. So either you are disabled under their rules or you're not. There's no like partial disability. There's no rating or percentage in my world.
So there is on the VA end of things, as I'm sure you know, there's an unemployable and unemployability denotation that can sometimes complicate your ability to earn any kind of wage while receiving your disability payments. Does Social Security have something similar to that?
Yeah, so kind of with this whole all or nothing concept, really you shouldn't work or couldn't work when you're trying to apply for Social Security. Sometimes I'll get calls and people say, oh, well, I'm going to just work until I get approved for disability by the Social Security Administration. And there are some exceptions that you can use to try and argue around why your work shouldn't be counted against you. But in general, it sort of goes against the whole idea of what Social Security disability is, which is you can't work, so the government is going to pay you a monthly check as your wage.
So that brings me to a couple of questions. So anybody who's worked with the Department of Veterans Affairs in filing a claim knows that the federal government is not timely with this process. If I'm unemployable, if I cannot work and I cannot subsist, I can't provide for myself, do I have to wait then to receive some sort of a positive verdict from the Social Security folks before I can receive any kind of compensation? Is there back pay from your date of filing that's similar to how the VA works?
Yeah, so they do have a back pay option. So if it takes, let's say 2 years to win your case, you might be eligible to receive then 2 years of past due benefits. That doesn't always happen though. And it is, you bring up a really good point. It's a real practical challenge for people. They lose their homes, they get divorced, they go through really difficult times waiting for Social Security to decide because the government unfortunately is kind of the same everywhere. It's slow, so they are not always quick at making decisions. And so you're a little bit at their mercy. So you kind of have to plan ahead and really commit. Either you're going to, I always tell people, are you going to kind of tough it out and continue working? Or are you going to tough it out with no income, waiting for the decision to hopefully come through?
So if you continue working, that could impact the verdict?
Yes, yeah, very much
Ah, okay.
so. Yeah, so Social Security has some rules about how much you can work, how much you can earn,
Hmm.
um, but it's not very generous. So in 2026, if you are working and you earn more than $1,600, let's call it, and that's gross, so even before your taxes are taken out, so like not your take-home pay,
Sure.
the government is going to say you are not disabled, period, end of story. Like no
1,600 in a
questions asked.
month?
A month, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's quite low. One of the things that I kind of see in my practice is it's not in the law, but in general, I find that if people are working more than 20 hours a week, they're probably going to run afoul of this earnings rule. So, I hear often from people, well, I took a pay cut, or I'm working part-time, or,
Hmm.
something changed, I don't make as much as I used to because of all these health problems.
Hmm.
The government doesn't really look at it that way. It's kind of this, again, all or nothing determination of,
Wow.
did you earn this amount? And if you did, no more questions asked.
There's
So
got
it's
to
very
be a.
strict.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's got to be like a leap of faith then for people who maybe make that leap into like I'm going to file for Social Security disability. Um, I will stop working so I can prove that I can't work. Um, maybe they've been working through pain or whatever this whole time, but that person stops working. But there's no guarantee at the end of the day, similar to a VA disability claim, there's no guarantee that they're going to come back in a few months and say, good to go. Here's a check.
Yeah, it is a huge leap of faith. And, I think maybe you guys see this on the VA side of things too. There can be mistrust. People don't always trust the government, especially for
Right.
you guys. I mean, if you got hurt in service, it's like, man, I'm here to serve my country, not get injured.
Right. Right.
And then you have to take the leap of faith, right, that the VA is going to find, the disability, after your service. So it's
Yeah.
the same thing with Social Security. It's especially too, like you're talking about at the beginning, where you paid in a lot of these cases for the
Mm.
benefit, and then they're not giving it to you. So it can
Yeah,
be
that's infuriating.
tough. Yeah,
Like I
not
paid into
always
this my
great.
whole life. I can't work, and now I have to fight tooth and nail to prove to you that this is the case and I can get the benefit that I paid for. That's it's infuriating. That's why people need good guys like you and like Jim and Monica here at Tabak on the VA end of things. Because on the VA end of things, it doesn't always work out. I've had claims denied. I've had to appeal. I've had to seek help from in the past a VSO and more recently with a firm like not like Tabak with Tabak, um, and getting Jim and his team's help. Um, and it's good to know that there are people like you on the Social Security end. So there are two scenarios that I want to throw out to you, which you may have seen 100 times. Let's say I am a veteran. I am receiving. I have service connection at 100%. I can still work. Um, but then I get to the point where the pain is too much. I can't work anymore. Do I file for Social Security disability insurance? Can I file for Social Security disability insurance? Can someone collect both at the same time? Should someone even apply? How do those two things work with each other?
Yeah, that's a great question. You can apply for both, and I always encourage everyone to apply for both. I should note that Social Security does have, it's similar to what you guys have in the VA space, the TDIU type of claim. I don't know
Mm,
as much about it, but my understanding is it's based on income and assets. So if you have some other source of like money coming in, they're going to say you can't get that benefit. Social
mm,
Security has an equivalent called SSI, or Supplemental Security Income. So if someone is 100% service connected, they're not going to be eligible for this income-based benefit because Social Security says, well, you have this other income, right? You can't get our income. So that's kind of the only caveat.
So they'd
Uh,
count that 100% from the VA as income, even though
right.
it's not taxable. It's still you're getting money.
Right, and it doesn't, right, and you're not working for it, right? You're not going
Right.
to clock in every day. It doesn't
Right.
matter what the source of the money is. If you have, even people that get like child support or
Mm,
alimony or Workers' compensation benefits, all of
Okay.
those will offset this needs-based disability benefit. And they say, well, if it's too much, then, you're ineligible, no matter how sick you are. Doesn't even matter.
So if I'm getting 100%, I mean, right now for the average person, 100% with no dependents is like a little over $4,000 a month. So there is no hope for me to meet the threshold that SSDI could supplement my VA disability claim. Is there any scenario in that case that you would still suggest somebody apply for that? Could things progress to a point where I need it? Is it something I could put in my pocket for later, or is it just, yeah, don't bother?
Yeah, so it's kind of confusing. The government loves their acronyms, as I'm sure you
Right.
all very well
Right.
know. So
Yeah.
in my space, we have SSI and
Mhm.
SSDI. So those are kind of the two primary disability benefits.
Okay.
They have the same medical criteria, there's no difference. But the SSI benefit is the needs-based one. So in your example, you're getting 100%, you're going to be ineligible to apply for the needs-based benefit. But if you've worked and you've paid taxes, and you've paid a FICA tax specifically, you have likely purchased insurance from the Social Security Administration, and
Mm.
that you could apply for that particular benefit. There are some time limits. Social Security is a little different than you guys, where you could go back in time. Maybe you were, left the military 20 or 30 years ago, and you could still file a claim, based on that service all those
Mm.
decades in the
Mhm.
past. Social Security is a little bit different. You need to be, it's more like recent. So I don't want
Is
to
there
like
a
confuse
statute of
everyone too much,
limitations sort of
but
thing?
there's time limits, I guess I would
Sure.
put it
Okay.
as, so we wouldn't want to wait like indefinitely if you're thinking about filing for disability. It's usually a good thing to file sooner rather than later because we're more time restricted than you guys are.
So let's say flip side, I am receiving Social Security because I am unable to work. And again, they don't care what the cause is. And then I determine I'm a veteran and I haven't applied for anything with the VA. And I determine that, hey, you know what? This thing that has made it so I can't work, that's actually service connected. Like I remember this time when X happened on my deployment and it led to this back pain that made so I can't. So on this flip side, I'm receiving SSDI because I can't work. Do I file my VA disability claim as well? Is there a chance that what I'm receiving for SSDI could impact my VA claim? So kind of same question, but the reverse.
The flip, yeah. Jim and Monica can give probably a more precise answer than I
Sure,
can, but I
sure.
would say, Social Security and VA really are totally separate. Yes, it's all a part of the same federal government, but they don't really talk to each other.
Okay.
And the standard and definition of disability is totally different and distinct as a legal matter. So, I always encourage everyone to apply for any benefit they think they might be eligible for. I guess the worst that can happen is they say no, right?
Right.
But from the Social Security side of things, it's not going to affect anything if you're going to go ahead, you're already receiving SSDI or SSI, and then you go ahead and file for VA benefits. If you're getting an SSI payment and then you're later approved for VA, they may stop your
Hmm.
SSI payment, right? Because they say, well, now you have too much income, from the
SSI is the
VA.
one with the income threshold.
Right, exactly. But SSDI doesn't have those income restrictions. It doesn't matter. So,
Got it.
I tell people you could have $1 million in the bank and still file for SSDI as long as you paid your taxes, right? It doesn't matter what other
Right.
sources of
Right.
income you might have.
So when in doubt, apply. There's I mean, little asterisk next to it, not legal advice, but like there are not really scenarios where it could potentially harm you. Like when in doubt, apply for your benefits.
Yeah, to your point, legal asterisk
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah.
Talk to a lawyer, make sure,
Hmm.
because everyone has different circumstances, and obviously, if you're having dependents, that can affect things too, and you certainly don't want to affect your family's benefits.
Right.
But in general, I encourage people, especially if you with Social Security. You paid in for it, right? And
Yep.
with VA, right, you served for that. You earned the right, to be considered for that. So I think that everyone should go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like Jim Brzezinski says, it's like if you were to get in a car accident and decide not to use your car insurance to pay for the repairs, that would be the equivalent of not filing for your VA disability or not taking your Social Security disability that you paid into, or your Social Security that you paid into. My final question here is how does all of this, if at all, interact with Social Security retirement? I know I mentioned earlier that there's the different pots, and maybe you can explain this. I'm sure you can explain this better than I can. But the retirement Social Security, the disability Social Security, if you're receiving SSI or SSDI, when you get to a certain age, does that impact your ability to receive Social Security retirement income? Does that all interact with your VA disability income? How does that all scramble together?
It is a scramble. It's actually very complicated, but there are circumstances under which a person could receive VA benefits, SSDI, and some retirement from the Social Security Administration. They're all going to interact with each other, and I generally recommend getting some advice on that because
Sure.
it is really dependent on your situation and the facts of your case. And one thing, I mean, probably your listeners know, right? So at age 62, you can apply for early retirement through Social Security. 67 for most people is like a full retirement age where you're going to receive a full payment. If you file early, right, you're taking a reduction in your payment. So, there's some decisions with that too, right? If you're 62 years old and you're thinking, okay, should I file for retirement now or do I wait if I can? Sometimes people can't afford to wait.
Right, right.
That's another decision point in the case as well, and you'll have to factor in, how does the VA play with Social Security and the retirement? So it definitely gets complicated.
So really no harm in talking to a professional, and you probably should talk to a professional because everybody's scenario is going to be different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased, I suppose, right?
Of course,
But
yeah.
yes, yeah, I do think that everyone should. It's probably in their best interest, just to get some information to make sure you make the best choice for you and your family.
But someone like you, who is like, one of the advocates, one of the people who would go in and fight for somebody if they get denied wrongfully, which happens apparently a lot, if I'm understanding correctly, and people get denied at first a lot in the Social Security end, and they need some support. Um, I totally, like, my train of thought just went. That happens sometimes. I was trying to simultaneously look at live comments. Yeah, that
Questions,
happens.
yeah.
Well, gosh, I'm sure I was going somewhere with that. It happens.
Yeah, well, it'll come back to you.
Yeah.
But I would say that, what you're talking about really, I think the best thing is to just consider all of your options. Like, I think sometimes, especially when I talk to veterans that also have a Social Security case, you kind of mentioned this earlier, they maybe feel like, oh, well, I get enough, or, oh,
Right.
I'm just done dealing with the government. And, because they hear about people getting denied, right? And it's a
Right.
daunting process. It can be kind of emotionally draining. But I think the best thing is not to give up. Just because you get denied doesn't mean you have a bad case. And a lot of people do get denied and they ultimately win. So there is some persistence that's involved. But you got to be ready for it. Like I said, you got to commit, because it could be a while.
That totally stoked what I had lost earlier. My train of thought was boarding at the station, and then it. So for people like you who go in and fight for folks who may get denied at first, you don't receive a payment for, like, you don't get, similar to lawyers who work on like accredited lawyers who work on the VA end. You don't get a payment unless something is won. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So free consultations, there's no upfront charge, no hourly rate, no retainer, any of that. We only get paid if a person is actually approved for benefits,
Right on.
which is great because obviously if people are coming to me, it's because they're not working usually. So,
Right. Right.
finding money to pay for an attorney is expensive. So
Yeah, I'd
it's
imagine.
lower risk, for somebody who's thinking about it. I don't
Yeah.
think it ever hurts.
Right on. Well, Lauren, are there any other additional pressing Social Security related thoughts or advice that you would throw out to anybody on the veteran end of things who maybe can't work or is considering throwing in the towel, unable to work?
Yeah, well, one thing that is a little bit nice is if somebody already has a VA service rating and they're 100% service connected, we can submit that information to Social Security, and the veteran, and then in our case, it's called a claimant, is eligible for expedited processing.
Oh,
Now, caveat, it doesn't always happen that way because it's
right.
still a long line, and maybe you move closer to the top of that line, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, you're going to get a decision in 3 months, right? You're usually looking at, a minimum of 6 to 9 months before your first decision.
That's even with expedited.
Yeah.
Wow. It
Yeah,
is a
but it's always
process.
a good thing to put in there, and
Hmm.
I do
Hmm.
think that it can help with credibility too, right? That somebody serves their country. And so I always love having that type of evidence in the case. It's never a slam dunk because the laws and rules are different, right? Just because you get the VA
Sure.
disability doesn't mean Social Security will approve your case for
Mm.
disability, but it never hurts. Definitely does not ever hurt.
Makes sense to me. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. Great chatting with you. I'll ask you to hang on the line here for just a second. There you have it, folks. Uh, we'll bring Lauren back. We got awesome, smart people around here that we can talk to all the time about stuff like this. If you have any questions about your VA disability or how any of this might react with something like Social Security, I encourage you to please chat with a professional. Um, ask for help. Don't be too proud. Don't be a tough guy or gal. Ask for some support. There are a lot of great people out there who want to help you and help you iron out a lot of these very complicated federal machines and systems that do or do not interact well with each other. So we'll see you next time.